Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Cathedral. The Sunshine Cathedral is a different kind of church where the past is past and the future has infinite possibilities. And with that, we invite you to come and worship with us here on Sunday mornings at 9 and 10:30 a.m. at 1480 Southwest 9th Avenue. Now, I invite you to come in and worship with us here at the Sunshine Cathedral.
Suddenly, a number of men appeared, and leading them was Judas, one of the 12, who went up to Jesus to kiss him. And then Jesus said to the guards, "Am I a bandit that you had to set out with swords and clubs? When I was among you in the temple day after day, you never made a move to lay hands on me." And they seized him. At his trial for sedition, Pilate said to Jesus' accusers, "You brought this man before me as a popular agitator, but I have found no grounds for any of the charges you bring against him. Nor has Herod either, since he has sent him back to us. This man has done nothing that deserves death." But the crowds began to shout, "Crucify him, crucify him!" And again Pilate asked, "But what harm has this man done?" But the crowd kept shouting at the top of their voices, demanding that he should be crucified. And their shouts kept growing louder. Pilate then gave his verdict. Their demand was to be granted. As they were leading Jesus away, large numbers of people followed him, who mourned and lamented for him. When they reached the place called the Skull, Golgotha, there they crucified him. Jesus prayed, "May they be forgiven. They do not know what they are doing." It was now about the 6th hour, and the sun's light failed, so that darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour. And Jesus cried out in a loud voice, saying, "My God, into your hands I commit my spirit." And with these words, he breathed his last.
Our first reading today is from the Psalter. Oh, give thanks to God who is good. God's steadfast love endures forever. I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Holy One. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our second reading is from the Odes of Solomon. I was crowned by my God, and my crown is life. I was justified by my God, for my wholeness is incorruptible. I have been freed from vanities, and I am not condemned. My chains were cut off, and I received the face and likeness of a new person. I walked with God, and I was kept safe. And the one who knew and exalted me is the Most High. The compassionate one kindly glorified me. And I opened doors which had been closed. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
Our third reading is from the Wisdom of Sarah Moores Campbell. In this season where light and dark balance the day, we seek balance for ourselves. Grateful for the darkness that has nourished us, we push away the stone and invite the light to awaken us to the possibilities within us and among us. Possibilities for new life in ourselves and in our world. In these human words, God's voice is heard.
God is with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. This is the gospel, the good news.
My great-aunt Gladys's husband, my Uncle Arthur, was chronically unhappy, always miserable, always complaining about everything. Well, one day at the back of the pasture, he was fussing at their donkey, Dorothy. He was telling Dorothy how she was no good and how she was a useless thing, should be sold to the glue factory. Well, eventually, Dorothy had enough and kicked my Uncle Arthur in the head. At the funeral, my great-aunt Gladys was at the head of the casket. People were filing by, and every time a man would walk by and whisper something to her, she would nod. And every time a woman would walk by and whisper something, she would shake her head. Finally, the minister came over and said, "Why are you nodding at all the men and shaking at all the women?" And she said, "Because when the men ask me, will I be okay, I say yes. And when the women ask me, can they borrow my donkey, I say no." And that's the message of Easter. I mean, really, that death is sad, and sudden death is very sad, and yet there is joy to be had beyond it. Executed, brutally, horribly, viciously, in the way that the Romans and the Babylonians before them had perfected. Jesus wasn't the first or the last or even the only one that day to be crucified. But we have inherited the story of those who suffered the loss of his physical presence from their lives. And even though they tell us they were hurt and they were scared and they were devastated and their grief was profound, they also tell us that life is greater than misfortune, that love is more powerful than tragedy, and that hope has a quality that is indestructible. And that message speaks to our hearts, even still. Remember that the Jesus movement made a dramatic change after Good Friday. Things changed, and the movement survived by adapting to that change. The execution of Jesus was a devastating moment, but rather than simply reminisce about how good it was when he was still with them, the apostles moved forward. They affirmed that they still had somehow experienced him in their lives. People were saying they were seeing him in visions, in the breaking of bread, in gardens, on roads as they traveled, that they continued to experience him. The power of his life and message was still with them. And so the apostles moved forward and kept the movement going. In fact, as they moved forward, as they reached out, as they adapted to changing realities within the empire and allowed themselves to be constantly renewed, the book of Acts says that the church's numbers grew daily. They even changed how they viewed themselves. Have you ever noticed that when you change what you believe about yourself, your world seems to change? Doesn't mean that a different president will be in office or a different Congress will be in Congress or a different Supreme Court will be sitting at the Supreme Court. Doesn't mean you'll have different in-laws or different neighbors or a different boss. And yet all of that sameness is suddenly different once you see yourself differently. To love yourself, to be happy with yourself, to know that you have a purpose and that you deserve joy. Suddenly, to own that, to embrace that, to integrate that, is to change your entire experience of life. They changed how they viewed themselves. They grew from seeing Jesus as God's chosen one to seeing themselves in sharing Jesus' anointing, in sharing his calling, and becoming the new body for his message beyond his earthly existence. They changed how they understood themselves, and thereby they changed their world and worlds to come. Positive change is the gospel message. In 1968, the Metropolitan Community Churches movement was born to affirm the sacred value of all people, the sanctity of all love, including same-gender love, and the human body as part of the creation that God calls very good. Instead of being a shameful aspect of human life, sexuality came to be seen as a divine gift. And this was a new message for some people, a change from what they had always heard before. Thank God for that change, because it has forever changed the conversation within Christianity, and it has forever changed our world. Our movement has added to the complexity and diversity and evolution of Christianity. The change we represented breathed new life into a 2,000-year-old religion, and it may have breathed enough life into it for it to reach its 3,000th birthday. Change, adaptation, evolution is why Christianity is alive today. It has changed over and over again. When the church closed the canon, when it held councils to debate issues, when the East and Western churches separated and went their different ways, when the Protestant Reformation opened up new understandings of Scripture and the faith, when churches started ordaining women and requiring more scholarship of its clergy. Over and over, the church has changed. It adapted to changes around it. As the world changed, it changed. And as a result, here we are in the world, changing the world because we allow ourselves to grow and change. Change not only helped the church survive, change is what keeps it relevant as the world changes. If the church won't evolve, it will stagnate and become a museum of history rather than a living movement that continues to progress forward. Change is the only constant in the universe, and those who survive change are the ones who adapt to it. The church sometimes is slow and stubborn when it comes to change, but eventually it embraces it because it has to. It has to in order to continue being the living Church of Jesus Christ. Living organisms grow and change and evolve, and so to be the living Church of Jesus Christ, the church does change. Golgotha represented a major change to the Jesus movement, but they adapted to that change, and their story became that even death could be changed. How we understand death can even evolve. Alleluia, Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Alleluia. That was the response to this tragedy. That yes, you think you have ended something by trying to destroy us and by hurting someone that we love dearly, and yet somehow our life continues. Somehow our light still shines. Somehow we are still here and moving forward. Christ is risen indeed. Alleluia. The response to Golgotha was Easter. Their response to death was to affirm life. Their response to sadness was to let joy live again. They could and would continue to experience Christ, but differently. Their experience, their witness, their affirmation was that even when the worst thing imaginable happened, divine grace could help them move through it and experience new hope and new joy on the other side. Following a resurrected Christ looked different than following a flesh and blood Galilean prophet. But they made the change, and by knowing that Golgotha couldn't destroy Jesus' message or the purpose of his life, they also didn't let it destroy their purpose. They didn't let it destroy their movement. They changed as their world changed. They evolved as the world evolved, and through evolution, they not only survived, they continued to inject healing energy into the life stream of humanity. They became something new to remain something relevant. They changed so they could be agents of change in the world. That's what being resurrection people looks like. Resurrection represents a new day. It doesn't negate Jesus' ministry before Golgotha, but it also doesn't let the ministry die at Golgotha. It doesn't let one moment in time be the last. No matter what happens, we are still called to move forward. The new day invites new ideas, new people, new energy, and therefore life is constantly renewed. I think that is a powerful message, even today, and it always works. I remember when AIDS first swept across our nation and the world like a viral tsunami. It was so scary, and the losses were so devastating. We'd go to multiple funerals each week, and sometimes we'd see a friend for brunch on Sunday, and the next Sunday that friend wouldn't be there, and the Sunday after that we'd be at the funeral. Some people lost more than one partner in just a couple of years during that crisis. But as horrible as that time was, we seemed to know intuitively that if we were going to get through this overwhelming crisis, we had to move forward. There was no going back to the world before AIDS. No matter how much we missed the days before we knew about AIDS, we couldn't go back. There was only going forward. Our best hope was to create a world post-AIDS, a world where the virus could be managed and maybe one day defeated completely. But that would only happen by living in the moment, by facing what was at hand and moving forward to what was possible. AIDS is still around, but most people have a fighting chance now. We rose above the terror. We rose above the heartache. We rose above the temptation to feel hopeless, and we created a world where AIDS could be understood, prevented, and treated. We resurrected our hopes. We resurrected our communities. We resurrected the belief that a future was possible if we would move into it rather than trying to replay the past. We honored those we lost by continuing the work in their names. And by moving forward, we created a world where AIDS need not be considered a death sentence. We were part of a miraculous change in the world. We were resurrection in action. I remember when multiple states had laws denying the right to privacy for same-gender couples. I've lived in a couple of those states, but we didn't go back. We kept moving forward, and then one day, right to privacy was affirmed nationwide, and then marriage equality discussions started to happen, and now we continue to move forward. There's more work to do, but look how much we've risen above and how far we have gone. When my grandmother was born, women couldn't vote. We've now had 3 women secretaries of state, and a third of the Supreme Court are women. My grandmother was born into a world where women couldn't even vote for the men in charge. And now a fifth of the Senate are women. Change always happens slowly, and there is always resistance to it. And yet when it does happen, we move through it and things get better. Jim Crow is now a distant memory, thank God. Slavery is a far distant memory, thank God. People who are differently abled are given consideration now, thank God. There is more work to do. We have come so far, but look how much positive change we have facilitated. And as we face what is and keep hope alive and move forward courageously, more miracles will take place. Of course, there are losses along the way, setbacks, defeats. Golgotha happens. But Golgotha is never the end of the story. If we choose to move forward, to adapt to changes, and to allow ourselves to evolve, grow, and change as well. I've seen people lose every penny they had and bounce back to prosperous living. I've seen people utterly abandoned by their families who nevertheless found success in life, who found self-esteem and who formed families of choice that brought them great joy. I've seen people go back to college after they retired, and I've seen others who became athletes for the first time in middle age. I've tried to become one of those people. Not as successful as some. But my resurrection day is on the horizon. I've seen people battle addiction for many years and finally break old patterns and live lives of sobriety and self-determination. I've seen people struggle with depression and learn to manage it and live with courage and joy. I've seen people given terrifying diagnoses and live with incredible grace and dignity in the face of their troubling news. I've seen people time and again march right to the shadow of Golgotha and rise above the experience to find a future filled with hope. Emerson said, "The finite alone suffers. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose." That's resurrection. The moment may be difficult, but we can rise above it. The possibilities that exist for us are limitless and eternal, so it is always too soon to sacrifice our joy. Don't let illness steal your joy. Don't let bullies steal your joy. Don't let gossip steal your joy. Don't let bigotry, even when it is disguised as religion, steal your joy. Don't let an empty wallet steal your joy. Don't let anything steal your joy. Golgotha happens, but it is not the end of the story, and without our permission, it cannot steal our joy. Jesus said, "Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." Don't let fear rob your joy. Fear is almost always false evidence appearing real. When there's a real tragedy, people are usually incredibly brave. But fear is often a lie. As the saying goes, danger is real, but fear is a choice. Let not your hearts be troubled. Beyond the experience of Golgotha, the infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. The infinite lies within you stretched in smiling repose. The divine life in you is ready to break forth and shine through and lift you up to new experiences of unfettered joy. Author Sarah Morse Campbell tells us, we push away the stone and invite the light to awaken us to the possibilities within and among us, possibilities for new life. Elsewhere she has said, we receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of certainty, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Bishop Spong writes, life that transcends every human limit is a powerful portrait. That is what the stories of the resurrection are all about. Resurrection is a dramatic change. It is something new and different and life-changing, but it means that the past is past and the future has infinite possibilities. It means injustice doesn't get the last word. It means not even death can rob life of its meaning. It means that love cannot be destroyed, and even when hope is utterly decimated, it can be brought back to life. It means, in the words of the psalmist, weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Good morning. Good resurrection morning. I don't know what changes are coming your way. Some of them you may view as positive. Some of them you may view as negative. Some of them may be a long time coming, and some of them may just come like a thief in the night. I don't know what they are, but I know that if you will adapt, you will also thrive. There is joy for you if you will release the past to the past and move into the future filled with possibilities. Resurrection is an invitation into a glorious future. And this is the good news. Amen. Are you ready for resurrection? I'm not asking you if you're ready to believe something about what happened a long time ago. I'm asking you, are you ready to apply it to your life right now? Are you ready for it to happen to you, in you, through you, today? So many times I have experienced and I've seen. We fall down, but we get back up. The door seems closed, but we manage to walk through it anyway. There is a stone trapping us in, but that stone is finally removed and we come out into the light. Is that what you need today? To boldly take a step forward into the unknown, into the light, knowing that it will lead to something good? Do you need hope renewed, courage renewed, peace renewed? Do you need to know that the past, as good as it may have been, pales in comparison to what the future can be? Do you need to know that the past, however horrible it may have been, need not define your future? This is the moment where we are. And in this moment, we can be raised to new hope and new joy and move forward into renewed life. If that is good news for you, ministers are coming forward now to anoint us with oil. It's a simple and ancient ritual, just reminding us that right where we are, God is. And where God is, the power of life is. And so we can always be renewed.
On the night you were betrayed, you took the bread. After giving thanks, you broke it and said, "This is my body, open to you.